This is the 6Three podcast. Your home for the most in-depth analysis on all things sports, entertainment, and basically anything else you can come up with. Where we have some of the hottest takes, some of the craziest takes, some of the dumbest takes, and where we believe that opinions are like. And now, to your hosts, Joel, Isaiah, and
Ben. Thanks for tuning into the 6Three podcast. I am one of your hosts, Joel, with my co-hosts Isaiah and Ben. Today, August 25th, we are going to do a fantasy football preview show. And this way, we're not revealing any of our secrets from our past week's drafts. So I bid you adieu and ask you the question of how do you guys like to approach your fantasy drafts?
All right, I can start. I think this varies a little bit depending on whether it's PPR or not PPR, but for the most part, regardless, early on, I really want to load up on receivers and running backs. I typically actually err toward the side of running backs, just because I think that, especially in a PPR league, if you find a guy that that consistently can catch the ball out of the backfield, I mean, he's pretty much providing you some double points depending on the weeks, depending on what weeks, what he's doing per week, obviously. Obviously, a guy like Christian McCaffrey's a perfect example. He's overblown to that level, but, you get a guy like him who, get 100 yards running and 100 yards receiving. You find guys like that, that's pretty special. And, those are the guys you want to look for, not necessarily to that level, but guys that, that can do both those things. This doesn't necessarily it didn't happen in my draft that we did the other day, but I typically like to take a QB late, unless you find a guy, a Mahomes or maybe Lamar, something like that early, unless it falls into your lap and it just makes sense. I've actually always been a guy that likes to take the best tight end that I can find, and likes to have multiple tight ends on my roster. Mostly because it seems like every year I have a good tight end, he gets hurt. So I like to have two good ones. Yeah. And then, from there, I mean, I'm not, just load up on depth on receivers and running backs. And, I'm not usually a guy that makes a ton of moves during the year. So pretty much my team that I draft is typically the team through to the end. There was a league that I won a few years ago that I think I only had, we tracked the transactions that are made, and I think throughout the whole season I only made like 5 or 6. So I just had my team the whole year. Really good team, it worked out that way. It doesn't always work out that way, but I usually stick with it. So we'll see, but that's typically how I go into each draft, what the game plan is. And I usually plan out as the draft's going. I usually have a pretty good idea. As it's going on, I pick 2 or 3 guys that I think are probably going to be available as it's going on, and have those guys in mind as the other picks are falling. That way, if number one guy that I want to take next, if it falls off, I still have a backup option, and I'm not sitting there scrambling every single time.
Yeah. So. Yeah, you saw even the value 3 or 4 years ago when Theo Riddick was getting 300 yards rushing in a year and maybe like 2 touchdown rushes, but he was pulling in like 80 catches in a PPR league. That guy was still picking up like 8 or 9 points a week, and so he was still an easy an emergency flex spot, even though he was technically a backup. So had a running back, like you said, that can catch out of the backfield in a PPR league, even if it's a half-point PPR.
Yeah.
Still like value.
Like James White and like Deion Lewis when they were there with the Patriots. I always picked James White.
Well, DeAndre Swift could be that again for the Lions this year.
Yeah, like perfect example of a guy like, he's going to light it up rushing. I mean, every once in a while he might have a big week, but probably not. I mean, that's just not what they do as an offense or what he brings to the table. But, next thing you know, he could have 7 catches for like 40 yards. And really, is that great? Like, as far as like yards per catch, not at all, but that's you're getting double-digit points.
I mean, in a 1-point PPR league, like that's 11 points right there.
Points just like that, and that's just not to say if he scored a touchdown or not. I mean, that's without him scoring any touchdown, without him getting any rushing yards at all. So, that's what I look for. But I feel like there's always like a couple sleepers, guys, rookies or guys that haven't done that before that just kind of find a fit every year, that end up being that guy. So I try to find that guy, but it doesn't always work out that way. But that's what I'm definitely looking for.
Yeah, I think you'll see in a lot of drafts, like you can see behind me, the colors, red and blue here, that's a wide receiver and running backs. You see a tendency for a lot of teams is to stock up on those guys early, unless you see the occasional greens with Kelsey or the grays with Mahomes. Like, you're going to find those early guys that you have to take. Yep. But typically you should be stocking up and saving the kickers and defenses for late. Unless again this year, 9th or 10th round, if you can get the 49ers or something for defense, that's one to aim for. But like I said, the kicker definitely should be your last pick of the draft. So that's kind of how I stand. Even Justin Tucker isn't really, to me, worth jumping up, in the 9th round to get a kicker just because he's Justin Tucker. You still never know what some of these guys are going to put up on a regular basis. And at the end of the season, it's the difference between maybe an average of 1 and 2.5 points a week. So I'm not gonna cry about that.
Yeah. We were talking about like PPR. I've always played PPR. You always got to look at that, especially obviously with wide receivers and running backs. Running backs especially, because that's why Clyde Edwards-Helaire is my number one rookie to look at, just because he's going to be like catching so many screen passes and short passes from Patrick Mahomes in that type of offense. Kansas City, Jonathan Taylor and some Giant K. Dobbins might get actually more rushing yards, but if you're in PPR, Edwards-Helaire is just going to be catching the ball a ton of times. I think that's something to always look at. But yeah, my main strategy is I usually tier off people. So in the main position, so running back, wide receiver, tight end, and quarterback, I'll make tiers based on I usually look at the past 3 seasons of points. So I'll go on I've always used the NFL fantasy app and website. So I'll go on there. You can look up the past 10 seasons. I'll look at the past 3 and just see their total points and see some consistent names, but build up tiers and then which of those tiers at what positions I'm comfortable in certain rounds. Like we were talking about, I don't normally get quarterbacks right away. It's usually till the 5th or 6th round at the earliest, and that's if it's a top tier guy. You always have those people in the draft, and I can be this sometimes where everyone's just going running back, wide receiver, running back, and then all of a sudden in the 3rd round someone gets a tight end, and you're like, crap, now I got to get my tight end before all of them are gone. But I'll usually just tier people off and just say what rounds I'm comfortable with tight ends. If it's a top tier tight end, I might go 4th round or 3rd round. If it's Travis Kelce or George Kittle, and I can sense that people might be looking at their sheets that way. But if those top tier guys get taken, I'm probably not going to get a tight end till at the second half of the draft at the earliest. So I always go by kind of tiers and just looking at those things to get those consistent threats. And then kicker and defense are always my last 2. It depends who's picking what. If people have already started picking defenses, I'll go defenses. People have started picking kickers, I'll usually go defenses just because I want the best one. But defense is such a crapshoot for me.
I'll run the waiver wire with a lot of those kickers and defenses. They're anytime it's a matchup thing for me. I look at the waiver wire, and sometimes even the defense I draft. If they're playing a piss poor offense that week, I just might take a flyer on them, even though they're averaging 3.5 point fantasy points a week. This is their way to get 9 or 10, and I'm happy with 9 or 10 points from a defense.
The only time I get frustrated about defense is if I draft one and they're just hemorrhaging points, so they're getting negative or just destroying me on it. Then it's just all right. At that point, that's why I don't like taking the worst defense. You know what I mean? I don't want to be the last guy to take a defense for sure. I'd like to usually be one of the first 3 or 4 people that take a defense. So typically I won't be the first guy to do it, but I might be the next guy to pull the trigger on one, just because once I see one taken, I'm okay, I don't want to be the guy stuck with, just a horrible defense, at the end of the draft. Obviously, like you can hit the waiver wire a little bit, but typically the best defenses are gonna stick on those teams. So
it kind of just takes a crapshoot for a defense to be worth anything anyway. Like from a week to week basis, you have a couple years ago that Kansas City LA Rams game, and both of the defenses had like multiple defensive touchdowns, multiple interceptions. Like the Rams defense that whole year wasn't doing anything, and then all of a sudden everybody wanted them after that week, and then they don't do anything the rest of the year. So if my defense is getting me, like, I don't know how you guys have done it in the league, but they start with 10 and then you kind of take away and add. If they're between like 5 to 15 points consistently, like, I don't really care. Like,
I'm usually happy if my defense puts 6 points up every week. I honestly
I'm happy. I'm happy if they put up points at all, then it's like, all right, like I didn't lose.
Yeah, you don't want to ever see negatives or even I don't know. I definitely don't want to see 2s and 1s either. But like, you don't want them to lose points for sure.
But if like every once in a while, like they get lit up by a ton of yards or something dumb, like, and they give you like 2, I'm not going to be like up in arms.
I just think the thing with kickers and defenses, like we see it almost every single year, like a top 3 defense turns out to be a bottom 10 defense by the end of the season. Like I remember, was it 2 years ago, the Broncos just came off a pretty good defensive year because they still had Talib and Chris Harris and Von Miller and other guys that were just putting up numbers, and they were shutting defenses down under 16 points a game. And they were like ranked the second best defense that year. And I think a lot of teams some fantasy teams were taking fantasy owners were taking them in like the 6th or 7th round already.
Yeah, that's absurd.
And they ended up being on the waiver wire by the 4th week because they're like, okay, I can't keep taking 2 points and 1 point and 0 points every single week. It's just not going to work for me.
Right. Well, like with kickers, and this is something I always do too, is I mean, because you kind of have to look at the actual player statistics, but I really look at the people around them statistics. Like if I'm looking at a wide receiver or tight end, I'm looking at their quarterback too, like, especially if they got traded, but just in general, like I do that with a kicker. I look at a team's red zone efficiency. Like if I want to make sure they can get to the red zone but don't score. Like that's why Kaimi Fairbairn's been so good over the past few years, because the Texans have a terrible red zone proficiency. They just don't have a good one. They kind of fixed it a little bit last year, but their play calling was terrible in the red zone. So then Kaimi Fairbairn got 5 field goals a game. But yeah, you got to look at like with New England wide receivers. If you're in a PPR league or Tom Brady wide receivers, I should say, because he's not with New England anymore. He's a high volume quarterback. Like he throws the ball a lot. Like he throws the ball very often. So yeah, Julian Edelman only may get 60 yards, but he's going to have 7 catches for those 60 yards. So like, that's always something you got to look at too. Is not like not just raw numbers, but the numbers around them too.
Yep. The other thing I've seen people do with kickers is just take Denver's kicker. He's bound to kick like a 60-yarder at some point.
Oh, McManus, yeah.
Exactly. Just take Denver.
It's an AFC West kicker.
Yeah, like if you play in the mile high, like just the air there is –
you're bound to kick a bunch of long ones. So
I mean, that's where Matt Prater set the 64-yard record for, and Jason Elam had the previous record of 63, and he also kicked for them back in the day. I mean, you're going to kick some far field goals in the mile high.
Yep. Yeah. And actually, probably not a bad bet for McManus this year, because I just don't.
He's still got a strong leg as it is.
Yeah, and I think they'll probably kick a lot of field goals this year. Not gonna lie. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I thought about. I was looking up the first rounders, like who are the common first rounders in this year's draft, and there's a lot of different people that kind of fluttered in, depending on if it was a 10-man or a 12-man or an even 8-man league.
Yeah.
But I looked up all the players that were drafted in the first round in 97% or more of online fantasy drafts. And there were only 4 guys that were drafted in the 7% or more in the first round in online fantasy drafts. And that was Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Michael Thomas, and Ezekiel Elliott. Those are the only 4. Otherwise, you get the other guys that like were close, like Kamara and Henry and Cook and Hopkins. You get those guys that kind of fluttered in there, but only 4 of them were in 97% of the first rounders or more.
Huh. That actually kind of surprises me about like, I don't know.
Well, because you get
guess
there's so many.
Yeah.
Those are the obvious. Those are the obvious elite.
Yeah, those are the 4 for sure.
They're going to put up a bunch of points pretty much every week, and then you have other people. There's a lot of uncertainty with Hopkins, with now having to split the ball with like Isabella Fitzgerald and Kirk, and then you have, and if Kyler Murray can see over his O-line to throw to him, like there's a couple of things with that, and then Tyreek Hill, injury issues, off-field issues.
And I feel like with Kansas City, although I feel like they'll put up some crazy numbers for sure in that offense, but Mahomes spreads the ball around. I mean, if there's anybody that I would bank on Mahomes and Kelsey over anybody else on that roster.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, and I think that like too with Indianapolis and Tampa Bay, if you need a wide receiver in a later round, pick one of their wide receivers.
Yeah.
Because Phillip Rivers and Tom Brady don't have their number one guy really yet. I mean, a lot of people say Tom Brady's is Chris Godwin, but
it could be Mike Evans. It could be Gronk again. Like you just never know.
Yeah. But they're still figuring that system out. So like by week 5, they're gonna all of a sudden like they're gonna know that this guy is like their like check down guy who just gets these little pot shots and gets 6 catches a game and gets you like enough points in that flex spot. So I look at like quarterbacks like that, and that was kind of with Phillip Rivers in LA and San Diego. Like both Williams and some of those guys just got a lot of passes thrown their way because Phillip Rivers Keenan Allen was the workhorse, but he spread the ball out. Like he just threw the ball all over the place, and their offense led to that. So if you needed a flex option or you needed a bye week guy, you pick one of those guys because they could just go off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think something I always do in fantasy a lot, and I think is good to do in fantasy more than just like NFL in general, is like listen to like meme jokes. Like Julio Jones is not productive in the red zone. Like that is you can say that he's still an incredible wide receiver, but in fantasy that actually matters. Like yes, he just doesn't get as many touchdown looks. So don't rely on him to get as many points as a Michael Thomas, who's much more productive in the red zone and getting touchdowns, or Tyreek Hill. Like as much as those may be joke things people say on the internet, like sometimes, especially in fantasy, you got to listen to them. Like, like Kirk Cousins sucks in primetime games. He actually does suck in primetime games. So if you have him on a Monday night and he's your second option or your first option, switch him out. I genuinely believe in those things. As annoying and sports fanny as they are, they do have some merit in fantasy football.
Right. Yeah. Who would you say? Would you guys say anybody else was, would be a for sure pick first round pick other than those 4?
Well, I got the 5th overall pick in the 2 leagues that I'm in.
Tough, yeah.
And I went with Derrick Henry, but I sit and think about it. The only worry with that, I think he's definitely capable of being an elite running back. It's just they worked him so hard last year where but they don't have anybody else at running back. Like they'll have rookie Darrington Evans and there's David Fluell in there.
Yeah,
like those guys are not proven in any capacity. So they might Evans and Fluell might combine for like 5 carries a game, which still means Derrick Henry is getting 20 plus a game. I just don't know who else getting the ball right off that.
Yeah, my only reservations with Henry are, like you said, like obviously they worked him like crazy, so who knows, is he gonna be able to, is he gonna be able to keep that up or whatever? And like I said, my preference for running back is typically a guy that catches the ball a lot, and he's not incredible. You're not gonna find him sliding out into the slot anytime soon. You know what I mean? That's just not his thing. Now they don't really throw the ball to their running backs very much anyway, so that's not like.
Yeah, even when Deion Lewis was there, they thought he would be valuable that way, and he just was not. I always took him late rounds, and he was never valuable.
Didn't even get used, So, I think he's probably a first-round guy for sure. I don't think that's an issue. But
looking at 5 is a tough spot. He's not worth being higher than 5. I don't think in any draft. But I don't know. I just don't. Alvin Kamara is maybe another guy, but I don't know. It was tough.
But if Michael Thomas is your top receiver, the other 3 top guys are running backs. Who's the next receiver then?
Yeah, so Alvin Kamara is valuable in a PPR, I think, as a first round because again, already gifted as a receiving back,
Yeah.
And if he's got a healthy year, he's valuable that way too as a running back. But the thing with the offense is, even when they had Mark Ingram back in the day, he was always splitting time with him. But now they got even a weaker Mark Ingram with Latavius Murray, and Murray was still getting 35% to 40% of the carries.
Right. Dude, I picked Alvin Kamara. I think I had the third pick in both my leagues, and I picked Alvin Kamara because he just really, like, towards the end of the year season before, he lit it up, and then they got rid of Mark Ingram. I was like, okay, like, he's gonna be a feature back. And then Latavius Murray just had like these 20 and like these sneaky touchdowns where he'd just steal them, and I'd just get so mad. And but yeah, I still think, like, if we're thinking, like, if I could pick like 10 guys to be my first rounders, like, I think, like you mentioned, Joel, you got McCaffrey, Barkley, Elliott, and Thomas. I'd add Kamara to that. Like, if you're going in a 10 or 12 team league, like, I don't see 12 players better than Alvin Kamara in a PPR league.
No.
I think I'd throw Devontae Adams in there.
But I wouldn't. And then
I don't know.
So much.
That could be bias. Yeah, I've had him the past 2 years, and he's been amazing for me. So it could be a little biased, but
I would throw Hopkins in there before Devontae Adams, though.
Just on talent, yeah. I mean, Hopkins is probably the most talented one, but the reason I still hold reservations on him is who's getting them. I mean, there's so many guys to get the ball. It's not going to be like he's the main guy like he was in Houston.
But if you're doing a 12 team and we're saying that's like your first round, like it's hard. You're going to be pretty hard pressed to find 12 people better than Hopkins and Adams.
But that's why I put more on Henry. He doesn't really have a huge injury history yet. He could now that he's been just overworked, but that was my only reservation with Henry is I'm going to take a running back that I feel like, I mean, is going to ride the momentum that he did through the playoffs to carry the Titans as far as they did. I'm hoping he rides on the coattails of that momentum from last season. And I don't see anybody else that's going to take carries away from him. So with wide receivers, it's like, I love those like Adams and Hopkins and Julio Jones and Hill and those guys are all very valuable wide receivers. But I just feel like there's enough this year that I held reservations about taking before. I mean, Kamara was my backup option. Like, if Kamara wasn't there when I was picking 5,
Henry, you mean?
Then it was Henry, so I'm like, is it fit? If I had 5th or 6th pick, it's Kamara or it's Henry for me. But
yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I just think it's tough because, like you said, like those top 4 guys, I think are just kind of head and shoulders above everybody else. And this isn't necessarily to say I mean, I would even put, on paper, Kamara's talent is probably right up there with those guys even, but just how they run their offense and how much, how they split carries and what they do with their offense, that changes what, and then, like I said, my only reservations with Henry are just he doesn't catch the ball nearly as much, so I just don't think he provides quite as much value. However, if he goes crazy like he did last year, he provides more value. So, you know what I mean? Like, he's a big, like, I don't think he's necessarily boomer bust because I don't think he's really ever going to be a bust because I think he's going to consistently probably get you yards and touchdowns, but he does have a pretty big chance of, like, exploding. I just don't know how much I don't know. It just seems like the last 2 years or so, he's just blown up the last, like, 5 weeks of the season. Like, he's gone crazy. When before, when he just was like, he was just okay otherwise, you know what I mean? Not a terrible running back by any means, solid, but just never anything special. And then it's like, oh my gosh, he had 240 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, like, what was that? And he had, 50 fantasy points, something crazy.
So that lends it to what I said earlier, like these stupid jokes. One of the podcasts I listened to, part of my take, they talked about how at the end of the season, Derrick Henry did so good because everyone was tired and didn't want to tackle him. Yeah, that's a stupid joke, but at the same time, the last 6 weeks of the season, everyone was too tired to tackle him, and he ran them all over.
Yes.
So find someone in your league that after the midway point of the season is pissed off Derrick Henry's not doing something. Throw him some, maybe like buy low on him, and then see if you can ride him to the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's definitely a really good a good point. But again, the other running backs that could be available too. I mean, we talked about the receivers and the risks there with injuries or sharing targets and stuff. Running backs like Dalvin Cook, injury history.
Yep.
I mean, he is playing for a contract. So he's got something to play for, but he still has to stay healthy. And I think Madison is actually slowly starting to steal more carries because Madison's on a pretty good back.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I'm interested in Austin Eckler this season.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know how he's going to be obviously start out as the main back, but he's durable enough to do that for an entire season with size and stature. And I think Justin Jackson, and Joshua Kelly could start stealing some carries later in the year as it goes on. And with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, still a rookie. Don't know. Do we take gambles on rookies in the first round?
No.
So Nick Chubb is splitting time with Kareem Hunt, but probably still getting 65 to 70% of the carries. And then the only other person that I could possibly think about would be Josh Jacobs, but do I trust him enough? Joe Mixon was too inconsistent last year, so those other borderline guys. But I think that's why it's hard to get. That's why you can see why those obvious 4 guys were 97%, and why the other ones maybe weren't, because there's still enough reservation to keep them off.
Well, and there are guys and not smart people that'll go out there and just take, they'll be like, screw it. If I don't have a better option, they'll take Mahomes in the first round. They will. Like there will be people that do that.
And he's got the record for most fantasy points in the season. Like you said.
Really, I mean, if you think about it, is it that bad of a pick?
Not really.
No, it's
really.
30 points a week sometimes if he's having a perfect year.
Yeah.
If you're gonna pick a quarterback in the first 3 rounds, like there's only, I could see 2 or 3 guys. I could see Russell Wilson. I think.
I think the only guy.
I think Lamar maybe in the 3rd if you had to.
Yeah. Russell Wilson, I've just like I said, I always look at the past 3 years. At the end of the season, he's in the top 10 or 5 of total fantasy points every single season for the past 5.
Yep.
So Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes are the only high-level consistent quarterbacks I can think of. Lamar Jackson just hasn't proved he's consistent yet. Deshaun Watson hasn't either. Like, they have potential, but they just haven't proved that they can – like, you can count on them because Patrick Mahomes, you can count on him in that offense, and Russell Wilson, you can count on him. But still, I would say, like top 3 rounds, those are the only 2 guys I wouldn't, like, outright laugh at.
So Ben picked right before me, and in the 3rd round, he grabbed Patrick Mahomes. And my first thought was I was not thinking quarterback still. Like I usually am one of the guys that'll wait till the 12th round or later to take my first quarterback.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know. Right after that, I'm just like, I am not gonna have this opportunity again, picking in the middle and having to wait all the way back around.
Right.
Sometimes the problem with picking in the middle is you got to reach. I picked Lamar right after Ben took Mahomes. Just, banking, he's the former last season's MVP. Maybe there's going to be something good that happens again. But
Lamar,
I don't like taking QBs.
But Lamar's a different QB, though. Lamar, I mean, if he puts up, like, the rushing numbers that he did, I mean, he still had big passing numbers, too. I mean, you could be sitting with like a gold mine of fantasy points there. I mean, especially if he scores rushing touchdowns. I mean, that guy could.
That was the thing. Last year, he did not get many of the touchdowns. He kept throwing them all to Mark Andrews. But
but if he starts, let's say he becomes Cam Newton when Cam Newton was an MVP and scores, almost double-digit touchdowns on the ground. Suddenly, you're looking at like that guy's almost a running back too. You know what I mean?
So, yeah, that's true. There's value there. I think it was for me. It was just a weird feeling of taking a QB. It was the first time in my 7 or 8 years of fantasy football in a row, like. Taking a quarterback in the top even 5 rounds. Never done it before.
I normally don't do it either, but I sat there and I'm like, same idea as you. You're mid pick and you're waiting that long to come back around. And I'm sitting there going, I'm like, I don't want to get stuck with like Dak.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm like, I really don't want to have Dak Prescott.
He's in the contract year. He's got something to play for too.
Yeah, but I just didn't want that. I don't like him. So I'm like, that's not what I want to be my quarterback. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to take Mahomes because that'll be fun. So I was like.
I mean, we all talked about it in the last show. Like, Mahomes is – if we have a second team we like, we all said the Chiefs.
Yeah. Fun to watch.
They're just fun to watch, yeah.
Yep.
But
I talked about it before the show started and said I had a pretty controversial sell high. Lamar Jackson is my sell high. I'm just very weary of him, like, at the rate that, like, how much – I think he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks, like top 10 easily, probably top 5. But people are acting like he is going to, like, get 30 to 40 points every single week. If you can, like, in these first couple weeks, like, just try to bait someone into giving you too much in a trade. If like I've never been in a league that's high on trades, everyone always holds on to who they have.
Mm-hmm.
In a league where people are willing to trade, I think Lamar Jackson could be a really good one. Like I said, I think he's going to be great. Don't hear me think he's going to be like a bust and like we're going to the mean, but I don't know. I think people are putting a lot of weight in Lamar Jackson.
The problem is if Lamar Jackson, if he is putting up 30 to 40 points in the game early on in the season, and that's the opportunity to sell high, you're still in your head. You're like, no, I need these points every single week. Like I'm winning games, and if he can keep it up, then I can win a championship on Lamar's shoulders. Like if you get 20 plus points more than the average other quarterback does, it's hard to pass up those 20 extra points every week.
Yeah, I think
it's tough.
I think with Lamar too, it's difficult because like the Ravens' offense is it's so different than pretty much every other offense in the league. I mean, they run the ball so much, right? And they're all based off of play action, which is not that dissimilar, but it's all off the read option look and like a lot of RPO stuff. Not really a whole lot of RPO because they're not really throwing the ball off of it much. And it's all, all out of the pistol read stuff, and it's a power offense, right, with a running quarterback. And that puts a lot of pressure on Lamar, and it was different last year for NFL defenses. And you saw last year in the playoffs when they struggled is because, like, if you forced him to be a pocket passer, if you forced him, into 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5, where it's like, hey, man, we probably can't just run the ball and, pick this up all the time, he struggled a little bit. And the Ravens, I mean, they were the team that they went for it all the time on 4th down too, because like they were always 4th and 1, 4th and 2. But if you force them into 4th and 6, like they can't go for it. They can't run the ball with Lamar and gain two yards because they won't pick it up. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if NFL defenses have figured out how to adjust to that, because that's so much different than other teams, right? It's a pass happy league, and they were the opposite, right? They were quarterbacks, run quarterback centric for sure, but just in a completely different way than any other team.
Yeah, adding J.K. Dobbins is just another.
Yeah, exactly. That's not gonna, that's gonna only make that better, if anything. But it'll be interesting to see if defenses have adjusted to how to stop that, and two, if that's the case, if the Ravens have something more to add to the table, what more can they bring to the table?
Well, and Lamar Jackson, I just looked it up because I think something you always have to look up in fantasy too is schedule. Especially like once you get enough data in some of these sites, like midway through the season to like pick guys for fill-in and buy spots. But Lamar Jackson has a very favorable schedule this year. Like he does not really play many stalwart defenses. Like the Pittsburgh always has a good defense. New England, but they do really bad against running quarterbacks. He plays Dallas once. That's a good defense. But other than that, he plays the Bengals twice, the Browns twice, the Giants, the Jaguars, the Titans, the Colts, the Eagles, Washington, not Redskins, Kansas City, Texans. Like not a ton of like defenses that like could figure him out or has the defensive mastermind to figure him out. Like he's not playing like
San Francisco or
San Francisco or even LA. I think they have a good defensive scheme or can, but like he's not playing some of these teams that have like really good defensive schemes. He's playing some porous defenses. I mean so maybe he is better than I'm giving him credit, but I don't know. I think you could bait some gullible person into giving you too much for him towards the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I can see it happening.
Yeah. All right. Well, who are you guys going to target in the late rounds? Who do you think are some sleepers?
Let me look at my list.
Ooh.
I know that I can start a little homer on this one. I'll go with 2 Detroit Lions that I put on my list, and that's Matthew Stafford and T.J. Hawkinson.
Yep.
Matt Stafford can be had in most fantasy drafts after even round 12. So he did play as a top 5 fantasy quarterback last year before the injuries plagued the rest of his season.
Yeah.
But again, if he's healthy, and I know it's a back injury, so you never really know, and it would be his second back injury, so it definitely a reason for caution, but a lot of high upside just being what he was before he got hurt in the first 8 weeks last year, he was on pace for a possible MVP run.
Yeah.
He had the Lions sitting at least 500, and then they fell apart after that. So, I'm pretty high on Stafford in that regard.
I think if you're sitting late and either you don't have a quarterback or you're just not quite comfortable with your quarterback, or if you just want to have a second QB because there's not a whole lot else available at that time, I think Matthew Stafford's a great pick. Because I feel like we said, he might throw up a clunker of like a 14-point game every once in a while, just because his team isn't, or at least hasn't been very good at all. But at the same time, you've seen him light it up, for darn near 40 a few times too.
Yep.
And if you fall on the right week where you put him in there the right week, or maybe he's your quarterback, he's gonna have some big games as long as he's healthy, for sure. I mean, he's a good quarterback. He's very good. It's a shame he got hurt last year. That would have been kind of even more interesting to be talking about, where we put him on, the rankings, or we put him this year. I like, and I don't know if he'd be considered a late round because he's probably going to get picked before that, but maybe a sleeper for sure. I really like Bryce Love. And I know Joel's like, oh, he's not what I made him. I made him amazing and Madden or whatever. But
he ran 450 yards for me.
Yeah, just with Darius Geis getting, his issues, I think he's just going to get even more of an opportunity. And we really haven't seen Love healthy at all. So obviously missed the whole year. So I really think that he fits that mold of a guy who can catch the ball in the backfield. He's quick. We can do a lot of different things. I really think if you're looking mid to late and he's still available, I really do think that he's not a bad depth piece for sure. And I think he would definitely be slotted in there as a flex for me if I had him on my roster. Not necessarily starting every week, but if you feel like he's gaining momentum, or just putting up some good weeks or has a good matchup, I'd definitely put him in there.
I guess in the 14th, 15th, or 16th round, I guess that'd be an option. I just think there's there's Adrian Peterson there, and there's Antonio Gibson there.
I think Adrian Peterson's about to get on a stretcher off the field, so he's about dead. So I'm not putting too much stock into AP. Yeah, I mean, they had Darius Geis, but Darius Geis is gone. So
I think maybe Love does emerge by the end of the year, especially if Antonio Gibson struggles. I think Gibson will actually start out as the lead back.
He'll probably start as the lead back.
And worst case, I think obviously if Peterson falls off to a stretcher, you could see some 60-40, 50-50 with Love and Gibson. It just depends on the success of Gibson early on in the year. And either way, I'm not super high on any of those running backs in Washington. I think that offense is abysmal. And I just don't want to watch it ever. They're terrible.
They are bad.
Right. I'll give you a sleeper in all the main positions, all four. Okay? Tight end, Jack Doyle in Indianapolis.
It's always been good. I like that.
I think Phillip Rivers is going to need a safety valve for figuring out a new offense.
The next Antonio Gates, baby.
Yeah, I think Jack Doyle's got a good set of hands. I like Jack Doyle, like those later rounds. Wide receiver, old Lions favorite. I'm going to go with Golden Tate.
I actually went with Darius Slayton as a sleeper for the
yeah. But Golden Tate missed 5 games last year, I think. 4 due to suspension, but he's getting up there in age, but I think he's a pretty sure bet. He's a safe, he's just catches the ball. He makes people miss even to this age.
He can still get 100 catches.
Yeah, for sure.
I love the yak. He's got some of the best yak in the world. I know I'm kind of interrupting a little bit, but I went with Darius Slayton for the purpose in New York for the Giants. As there's one of 3 wide receivers there that are going to blow up. So I did make the point of, it's either going to be Sterling Shepard, Golden Tate, or Darius Slayton that have a good season for them. You just have to hit on the right one. And I think Danny Dimes, he's going to find the guy that he's the most comfortable with and will make him his go-to as a young quarterback. You got to find that go-to when you're a young quarterback. And I think Slayton's that guy because he was a breakout receiver when Danny Dimes was starting to get hot last year. I just felt like Slayton had the most success when Daniel Jones was starting to have some pretty good games. And so I don't see why he wouldn't continue to be a bomb option or try to carry on that momentum that he had or that rapport that he built with Daniel Jones towards the end of the season when he was getting comfortable. But, yeah, it's either one of those three. So
Yeah, I know. So, and I do like Sterling Shepard. Slayton, I mean, just being in his second year, I don't know what to expect from him. But like I said, I do like Shepard. Shepard was always great to have when Beckham was still there, and he just like sneakily 25 points.
Yeah.
So my quarterback, don't know if you'll agree with this one, but I really like Teddy Bridgewater in Carolina. I don't like their team. I don't really care for Carolina. I don't think they're going to be good this year, but I don't know. I like Teddy Bridge. I think he's been really craving a starting position for the past couple years, not being able to get it after getting injured. I think he's waiting to just make his name known again after showing some flashes in Minnesota and like before he got injured, like being a lot of people really like started calling on Teddy Bridgewater's name. Like the injury history made it not happen, but if he would have entered free agency fully healthy, he would have been a hot commodity, I think, before he went to New Orleans. But yeah, I don't know. I look for him to get some of those little dump off screen passes to Christian McCaffrey for a quick touchdown. I think he'll get one of those a game, basically.
It is interesting. We did our running back rankings, and I think we ranked the Panthers dead last. They're just terrible. Oh, well, not dead last because they had Christian McCaffrey, but after Christian McCaffrey, it's like Reggie Bonifin and like Jordan Scarlett, and like it is not a pretty backfield after that. Right. So pretty much bank on McCaffrey carrying that offense.
Well, in Carolina is going to – Carolina's going to be playing – I mean, the Falcons are still a good team, but they're going to be playing Tampa Bay, and they're going to be in basically the hardest division in the league.
I think they're going to be dead last in that division.
But they're going to have at least 6 games of the year where they're playing from behind. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're going to be throwing the ball late.
There's something to be said about that. There is something to be said about that because I always get so frustrated when so if I have a team's defense and they're actually doing decent, right? Mm-hmm. And the teams whose defense that I have is up by like 30, going into the fourth quarter, or even just up by like 20 going in the fourth quarter. They're playing prevent defense the entire time, and they're just giving up chunks of yards the entire time. And I'm sitting there hemorrhaging points because there's something to be said about that. If you're playing from behind the whole time, you can put up big points if you're the opposing quarterback, just throwing the ball 60 times a game because you have to. So there is something to be said about that for sure.
Well, that's when Patrick Mahomes has those 15-point games because they were up 28-3 after the first half, and then they just run the ball the rest of the game.
And then they pulled him before the fourth quarter.
Yeah, so I think Carolina's going to be playing either very close games or high scoring, like trying to catch up. And I think Teddy Bridgewater, like you said, they're not going to be relying on Christian McCaffrey in the fourth quarter when they're down by 2 touchdowns. They're going to be throwing the ball. So if you're going to look for a sleeper quarterback, maybe it's not Teddy Bridgewater, but look for one of those teams that
the Lions. That's why I said Stafford.
Yeah, can be competitive, but is going to be like playing in close games or from behind. Yeah, like I think that's just something to look for. And then my running back sleeper, and it may not be too much of a sleeper, but I think people forget about him a little bit because of how many people shared his or his quarterback or running back. Matt Breida.
Oh, not
okay.
So
from the same team last year, though.
Getting out of San Francisco, where there was about 20 people running the ball every game, going to Miami, Miami's figuring things out on the offensive end with a new quarterback, and I think Matt Breida is gonna be able to eat in that, be able to be relied on, I should say. I think he's going to get a lot of times where they're going to call his name because, quarterback and the rest of the offense just isn't working out, and they need a chunk play and try to get him to use that speed or use that shiftiness to just get him some points. And something with rookie quarterbacks is red zone efficiency again, and I think they'll be relying on Matt Breida in the red zone a lot too. Maybe not in pound it in because he's not that kind of running back, but an outside zone.
Jordan Howard to pound it in. So
yeah, but an outside zone 10 yards out, they're going to be asking him that of him a lot. So I don't think he's anybody's not going to draft him. He's not that kind of sleeper, but I think he's got more value than some people might think.
Mm-hmm.
I think I guess I'll brush up some of mine here too before we get to Ben's too. But I had Raheem Mostert from obviously the same team as last year with Breida, but some of those guys are obviously now gone. Like Jeff Wilson, not there, and then we obviously Breida's gone, and then who else opted out for them? I feel like there was another running back that left.
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't ring a bell.
They had like 4 of them, so
I don't know.
Yeah, I know, but now it's just pretty much Mostert, Tevin Coleman, and Jerick McKinnon. So with Coleman's inconsistencies last year, McKinnon's injury history, Mostert's momentum from last season, I think he could eventually be the lead back.
especially in playoffs.
I think if anybody's going to be a lead back in that room, it's Mostert.
Yeah, and he's obviously extremely fast as well.
Yeah,
But-
they're still going to do their running back by committee, but I think it's going to be less so than last year, I think.
Yeah, because there's just one, like you said, Breida is gone. That's one less really competitive person there. But
Right, and there were a lot of games where Breida was their number one. You could argue that he was their number one last year.
Yep.
Yeah. Based on downs played, yeah, he was. But yeah, Justin Jackson's another guy that I put down there. A lot of Chargers beat writers actually still expect Justin Jackson to receive 35 to 45% of the team's carries, opposite of Austin Eckler. At some point, Joshua Kelly could be a sleeper or a guy to pick up on the waiver wire if he's still there in your league later in the season, because I think his carries will start to boom come even week 4 or 5. We'll start seeing more Joshua Kelly. But early on in the season, I think Justin Jackson would be a good guy to snag, and I ended up finding him in round 13 in this draft. So I like Justin Jackson there a lot. And then the other 2 guys I still have left here is N'Keal Harry. Obviously, much of the rookie season was done in by injury.
Right.
But if he can build new rapport with Cam Newton, he could see some increase in numbers. There's just not a lot of great options there on the offensive side, like it seemed like there was when Brady was there running the show.
Well, the difference is with Brady, you just knew they'd figure it out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, regardless of who was there. So,
yeah. I think N'Keal Harry is poised. I mean, he's got a huge body, and he obviously uses it to try to make some pretty spectacular catches. But he's going to need – I don't know if consistency is going to be something that's there yet, but I do think that he's worth a late-round flyer for sure. And then my last one, and I talked to you earlier about this, Ben, but I went back and forth with Denzel Mims and T. Higgins.
Yeah.
Just 2 young rookie receivers, not really usually super jumpy on rookies, but if you got a last-round guy to still fill in, Sam Darnold still isn't also an approve-it year at some point here in East Rutherford. And I think Mims has a lot of talent, and the young QB may want to build a long-term connection with a young wide receiver. So it would be the same in Cincinnati with Burrow and T. Higgins,
Yep.
Especially if A.J. Green faces injuries there too again. And Tyler Boyd's also injury-prone, and John Ross is also injury-prone.
Yeah.
So maybe T. Higgins is the one mainstay. So, that's why I said I went back and forth between Denzel Mims and T. Higgins for the same reason. Young quarterbacks that need to establish rapport with the young wide receiver, and it could be a long-term thing.
Yeah. What do you guys – and I know this is kind of getting away from the flyer thing a little bit, but where would you guys take – so I know we talked about, the top receivers, Where would you put Will Fuller now, though? Because, I wanted to take it. I wanted him, but I just couldn't find – he's been hurt so often, right? I wouldn't consider him a sleeper or necessarily a flyer by any means because he's established in the league for sure. And he's had very good seasons. But, a lot of stuff I've been reading has been he's a sleeper this year. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's probably the number 1 receiver on the team. But then you look back and look at his, as far as, his years, and it's he's hurt half the year. He blows up for, 3 games where he has, 30 points, and then he's hurt again. So I don't know. I probably wouldn't draft him until, maybe the 8th round.
I don't even know if I think I roll him off all the way until the 10th or 11th on mine. And he's gone usually by then, so I didn't have to worry about even battling that in my head. Because
that's a tough one.
still going to take him on, namesake and knowing that.
And he can fly. I mean, he makes big plays. That dude makes some huge.
They got 2 speedsters. Brandon Cooks is there. Brandon Cooks has always been one of the faster running wide receivers in the league.
Yep.
And, Kute is probably not going to do a whole lot, and they don't have a whole lot of talent at tight end.
Nope.
So, yeah, I mean, Will Fuller is definitely going to see no shortage of opportunity, especially early on, to make a difference. So week 1 and 2, you might be a guy to pluck in a flex in a PPR.
That's what I mean. I mean, you look at he's had some massive games. Like 200 yards, like 3 touchdown games, like and 10 catches.
Yeah.
But then he's also had games
the
where it's
first
like
2 or 3 weeks before he gets hurt. Maybe sell him high after 3 weeks. He's not lasting a full season.
no.
And
He's not.
you gotta realize that those games are while DeAndre Hopkins is being guarded by a cornerback and a safety over top. Like
He might get a little more attention this year by defense.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think his prospects are definitely higher than they've ever been. But I really think that's going to be. I mean, we say running back by committee. That's going to be wide receiver by committee. I think.
Yeah.
All those guys are fast. All those guys are good route runners. Kuti, Brandon Cooks, and Will Fuller. It's kind of like Joel, you were saying with the Giants. It's like it's going to be one of them. But I don't know. I don't know who it's going to be. I think. Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know if Will Fuller can be a number 1 option. I think Brandon Cooks can be a number 1 option better than Will Fuller can because there's times where Brandon Cooks almost has had to be a number 1 option. Rams just because of injuries and because of how they ran their offense. There's a lot of games where you could clearly tell they were trying to make Brandon Cooks the number 1 guy on wide receiver. But I'm not sure. I think it's gonna be Cooks or Fuller to me. I like QT is gonna see an uptick too, but not enough, I think, to be reliable in fantasy wise. So I don't know. I think you gotta take a chance with either Cooks or Fuller, but I'd say kind of like in that your third wide receiver at the most. Like he's got to be your bye week guy or your.
If he's your third or fourth receiver. That's pretty good.
Well, fourth receiver for sure. Even third receiver is, like I said at the beginning of the season, he may be one of the best third receivers to have on a fantasy roster.
It's just probably not making it through, like you said.
If you're in a 12 or 14 team league, like he might be a pretty decent number 2. I mean,
deep league,
yeah. So, but yeah,
because he was definitely on my list of guys. It's like I don't want to consider him a sleeper because he's established. Like. Sleeper to me is guys that like kind of come out of nowhere.
Yeah, the Philip Lindsay's like that would be the greatest sleeper prediction of all time that year.
Like, and then after that sleeper year, they're not sleepers anymore because they're just established. You know what I mean? So to me, he's established. He's had like some good moments, and really, he's had a couple okay years when he's been mostly healthy. But he's just not. I don't know. He was one of those guys that I put on that list because it's like, all right, is he. Where would you really draft him? And if he's available, like I said, if he's available 9th or 10th round, I'm probably taking him for sure. Just because he's got a chance for sure early on, definitely.
So I think one of the most interesting things about fantasy from year to year is people that have moved and rookies. So if you guys don't have anything more to say on
let's do rookies.
I'd love to. Yeah, so I'll get to rookies, but let me ask one thing. I'm going to ask 3 quarterbacks who have moved places, moved teams or moved roles. Well, moved teams, actually. And I want you guys to rank them and where you would pick them. So Phillip Rivers, Cam Newton, and Teddy Bridgewater.
Would you say Case Keenum?
Cam Newton.
Okay. I
Teddy Bridge and Phillip Rivers.
I'm going to rank them. I'm going to go Cam Newton, Phillip Rivers, Teddy Bridgewater.
I'm actually going to go Cam Newton, Teddy Bridgewater, and Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, Phillip Rivers' arm might fall off by week 5, but if he doesn't,
babies around the house. I can't imagine.
I'd probably say Cam, Teddy, and then Phillip.
I think Cam's going to be good. I really do. He's going to be good.
I think the Patriots, I think they're just the type of team that's probably done their due diligence before they signed into a contract, and they may have felt like they got a steal even with that contract amount.
When's the last time that the Patriots either traded for a player or signed a free agent, and you were like, you looked back the next season and were like, that was a terrible decision. Like,
right.
Chris, no, I'm just kidding.
It can happen, but
Brown, maybe.
Like, I mean, look at Kyle Vanoy. Look at Kyle Vanoy. He was on the Lions and he really didn't do a ton. Like, he had talent, but then all of a sudden he goes and he's a freaking.
Well, and the other thing that they do is like if it doesn't work out after like 3 weeks, they just cut them.
Yeah.
Like they don't stick with them. They're like, all right, well that didn't work. All right, get rid of it, move on.
Third grader on the playground that looks promising. Like they'll just take anybody. Then Bill Belichick will make them work.
Well, didn't they just signed they just signed some like 36-year-old like Marine Corps veteran who hadn't played football in like 6 years.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? And
Dude, they're
he'll
tanking for
probably be
Trevor
really
Lawrence.
good on special teams.
And they take guys that are just fast from like rugby, Australian rules football. Like they're just picking up dudes that just look good, and they're giving.
Matthew Slater is a perfect example of a Patriot guy. Literally could never be a good receiver probably, but is an incredible special teams player, and that's all he's there for.
Yeah, they just know how they want to run that roster from the 53rd guy to the first, and I just I probably wouldn't have put it past me to draft Jarrett Stidham as a second quarterback if they in fact did not even take Cam Newton, just because I felt like Belichick would have made it work.
They would have figured it out. Yeah. Probably.
Okay, let's get to some rookie talk. So I'll ask some rankings again, or we can just discuss the names. But 3 quarterbacks: Joe Burrow, Tua, and Justin Herbert. Let's say they all start. Let's say they are all day one starters, just for the sake of the argument.
I'm not taking any rookie quarterbacks.
But if you have to pick one of the 3 for fantasy, which one of these guys are you putting trust in?
Burrow.
I'd probably say Burrow, I guess.
But I'm not putting any. I'm like, I literally put that in my notes. Like when I discuss rookies, I'd be like, all right, like these are the guys I would take it, and then I put down like I'm staying away from Burrow. I'm not drafting Tua. I'm not drafting Herbert, and then I put like ... I'm like, I'm just not drafting any rookie quarterbacks. Like I'm just staying away from them. Period. Because
so I actually did put Joe Burrow on my draft board, but I never got to that decision because I typically only will draft one quarterback anyway, and because I didn't wait until the 14th round to get a quarterback, I didn't even have to battle it. I got Jackson pretty much right off the bat, and I got Russell Wilson in my other league in the 6th round. So like, I didn't have to worry about quarterbacks all at the end. I took them pretty early, more early than I usually do, and so Burrow would be the guy I would take because he's obviously talented, and I think they have more wide receiver options that are talented.
That's the only reason why I take him is because
that would help him out if he did actually suck. And then Tua's just gonna throw to Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki. Like there's nobody in Miami to throw to right now.
If I were Miami, I would find a way to not play Tua this year and just like
let him
healthy and
learn under Fitz.
Exactly.
It's magic, baby.
Yeah. And then Herbert, obviously we know he's not starting day one. Tyrod Taylor's going to, but I think Tyrod Taylor could keep it going. But it could just be like Tyrod Taylor was when he was in Cleveland the year they drafted Baker Mayfield. And they're like, all right, we're playing Tyrod for 4 weeks and Baker's already starting. So we don't know.
And I know there won't be fans in the stadiums, but
probably
Browns kind of did that because people were asking for Baker. Like they wanted to see him. Like they wanted the crowd to cheer. It's like the Boston Celtics with Taco Fall. When that guy goes on the court, everyone loses freaking minds.
Yep.
He doesn't do anything. Like
Tim Tebow bats in Double-A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could. I mean, if Tyrod Taylor, because even in Cleveland, Tyrod Taylor wasn't terrible. Like they just didn't play well and they didn't win.
He's not putting fans in the seats. Like
no. So I mean, if ticket sales are going down and people are disgruntled, put in Baker Mayfield. Same thing with Justin Herbert. He's not as flashy of a name as Baker Mayfield, but you could hear some people like clamoring for that. Same with Fitzmagic. I mean, I love Fitzmagic, but he has a very short leash no matter where he goes.
Yep.
Games where he's just balling, it only takes one game for him to suck where they're just like, all right, you're done.
Yeah, you can put up 52 fantasy points the week before, but if you put up 12 fantasy points, see, buddy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't trust any rookie quarterbacks either. It has to take me, like, maybe if I have a very late bye week and the waiver wire is crappy, like, I might just try one out if he's been pretty successful and has a good matchup.
Sure.
Like, but, I just don't like it. So, if
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I said rank these 3 rookie running backs because we're obviously know Edwards Hilaire is the first one going.
Yeah.
But you go Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, or Cam Akers.
Swift, Akers, Taylor.
Add Moss to that. Add Zach Moss.
Moss.
You taking Zach Moss?
Yes.
I'm taking him last.
Oh, last. Okay.
Wait, say the names again. Sorry.
So it would be Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, Cam Akers, and Zach Moss.
I go with J.K. Dobbins.
Okay. Well, I left J.K. out because some people might even he's going to be – I think if I plugged in Dobbins, I plug him in Jonathan Taylor. But before I'm DeAndre Swift still.
Yep.
I for sake of like workload, I think I'd go. Gosh, it's say the name. Oh, Taylor Swift, Akers, Moss.
Yeah.
I would go. Gosh, I'd almost go Akers, Taylor, Swift, Moss.
Oh, Akers even before Jonathan Taylor.
I like Akers.
I just think he's gonna get. I think he's gonna get a lot of chance.
Yeah, a lot of people like Darrell Henderson there though too.
True.
That's a backfield we don't know. Akers is definitely worth the draft pick. There's no doubt. And in most fantasy drafts, I would aim for Akers by round 10 if he has not gone yet.
I think he has the least competition. Zach Moss is behind Devin Singletary, who had a great year last year.
But Zach Moss could make a rise if
True.
star does struggle a little bit. I took
DeAndre Swift will be a passing downs back, but he still is behind Kerryon Johnson for getting actual carries, red zone looks especially, and Jonathan Taylor, like he was a kind of a sleeper pick for me too. Nyheim
Hines, yeah, and then
whatever, man.
There, and then you have Marlon Mack. It's a fullback.
Yeah, so they're still there too, and they're productive backs. Like they're not bad.
Yeah.
So Jonathan
Marlon Mack's a former 1,000-yard rusher. It's hard to just say, all right, see you, buddy.
So Taylor Swift and Moss.
Taylor Swift. I like it. I like you.
Taylor Swift.
I knew you were trouble. Yeah. Oh man.
But I think Akers just has the least competition. So to be a not a feature back, but the feature back to get the majority of looks, Akers probably has the best outlook on that.
Okay.
To me. So what about rookie wide receivers? Oh wait, Joel, you didn't answer that last one. How would you rate them?
I would actually go Jonathan Taylor first, and then I would actually still go DeAndre Swift, and then Cam Akers and Zach Moss. But I personally think Darrell Henderson's going to steal the show early on, enough to still limit Cam Akers. I like Darrell Henderson. Even though we ranked the Rams running backs last in our running backs list, I think Jonathan Taylor is going to pull away because it's hard to still draft a running back in the second round and be like, oh, I'm not going to play you that much. So I think he's still going to get a decent amount of opportunity. And then DeAndre Swift, I think Kerryon Johnson still can't stay healthy, and he's also he was a projected first-round running back that ended up falling to him early second round. It's hard to do that to your early second-round pick. And then the weapon that he is as a receiving back as well, there's value in a fantasy league. To me, that's why I take DeAndre Swift second. And then Cam Akers, obviously we talked about, he could eventually start. And Zach Moss, best case, splits 50-50 with Singletary by the end of the season. But I think
I still think I think Singletary and Moss go 60-40 at best.
Yeah.
Singletary was great last year.
I like Singletary, yeah.
I know everyone was like oogling over Josh Jacobs, but like Singletary was right there with him of being a breakout player. Like he was right behind him. Jacobs had the bigger numbers, but yeah. So let's go with rookie wide receivers. Basically the top four guys: CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, and Justin Jefferson. How are you guys doing them?
I like Jeudy. Say it. Jeudy, Ruggs,
Lamb, and Jefferson.
So I'm probably going CD. Then I'm going to go Jeudy. I'm going to go Jefferson. Then I'm going to go Ruggs.
That is very tough, but that's I'm not going to knock in that order. I literally think CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy go like next to each other in the same round, right at like the same pick. To me, I'm like, you can't go wrong with either of those guys in like the 10th round. I don't know if you take any rookie wide receiver earlier than the 8th.
No.
Especially,
if CD and Jeudy are there in the 8th, and like you've already kind of shored up everything else, then yeah, you probably take him there. But
It's just they're still both playing in very good receiving systems. Although
Right.
Judy, I take Judy first just because Cortland Sutton has yet to break out, which I think he could. And Drew Lock blew up really well at the end of last year. And, maybe Judy is the guy that he goes to. But they also drafted rookie KJ Hamler. So which rookie is going to get the most attention? It's still going to be Judy. I think Judy is one of the most durable ones as well. CD obviously has competition with Michael Gallup and Amari Cooper. And so I think there's still, Amari and Michael Gallup, I think, are still going to be ahead of him. By the end of the year, CD will probably be number 2. But I think starting out, Michael Gallup's number 2. And then Justin Jefferson, you know what? They don't have Stephon Diggs anymore. So it really actually makes that tough for me because I think Jefferson – who's their number 2? BC Johnson. So I think Jefferson is the clear 2, but Kirk Cousins is throwing him the football. I don't know, man. Those 3 guys to me you could make a case to be really close to each other, but technically Justin Jefferson's currently the number 2. And the other one, Judy's a number 2, CeeDee Lamb's a borderline 2-3. I might even put Jefferson right ahead of Lamb, but I think Ruggs certainly is the last just because Marcus Mariota and Derek Carr, their quarterback. Yeah. And I'm not super high on any of those guys. And that offense that offense doesn't shine very well.
I think Ruggs has a chance to make some big plays, but I don't think he's going to be consistent at all.
I think he's going to Todd Perriman or DJ Shark. Like it may have – and Shark was good last year. So what am I saying? John Ross, these guys are crazy speedsters, but, no real consistency like you said. So.
But the thing is, though, that the Las Vegas defense or offense needs a spark. You know what I mean? Like, they need something. And if Ruggs the first few games can show him a little something, if he can just, not be figured out by a defense yet and rely on speed and take advantage of matchups, I think they could start looking his way pretty heavily. If he can just – because they just need something. They're in a new city. They're, they have a new fan base. They need something to happen good for them. And if Ruggs can – his first 5 weeks are going to tell how his season goes. If he can just take advantage of every opportunity he gets and, get those looks from Derek Carr and John Gruden, I think he could have a really good year. I don't think it's going to – I still think he's number 4 on my ranking for that. Yeah. I think it's, mine's Judy, Lamb, Jefferson, and then Henry Ruggs. But I don't know. Ruggs could just surprise a lot of people and just be this incredible spark that offense needs because they desperately need something.
For sure.
Yeah, it's hard to go wrong with a lot of those guys. I think they're all going to get their opportunities. I don't know if the Raiders' offense is just consistent enough to get Ruggs the ball on a consistent enough basis. So that's why I would put him 4th on those guys. But all could definitely – I think it's definitely a better rookie receiver class than it was last year.
Yes.
For sure.
And I don't think it's close.
I mean, if we're putting like a N'Keal Harry on this list, he's number 5 easily.
Yeah. All right. Well, rookies to avoid. Is there anyone that people are thinking of might actually practice?
The quarterbacks.
Yeah, all the quarterbacks, all of the above on the quarterbacks. But
I think I don't know. Obviously, the quarterbacks. I say the quarterbacks jokingly because I already mentioned it, but I just don't. I'm not sure. I wouldn't go with Burrow right now, and I'm not trying to push I know a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, Joe Burrow is going to be great." Look what he could be or whatever. But I'm he's not going to be very good his first couple years, in my opinion. He's just not. He doesn't have a good team. He doesn't have a. I really am not sold on their coach necessarily, and I just don't think he's going to be that great. 3 or 4 years from now, I think he could be, but they're just not going to be a very good team. So. Other than that, rookies to avoid, I don't know. Some of the later receivers for sure. I don't think I just don't think they're going to blow up yet.
He was a relatively early pick, and I like LaVisca. I just don't think he's. There's too much other crowded stuff going on in Jacksonville, and there's no dominant wideout. Who knows how good Gardner Minshew is going to be, or whatever.
He likes DJ Chark a lot. He's kind of got his guys already.
He's got Dede Westbrook there and Chris Conley just in case. So
Yep.
Laviska Shenault's got a little bit of a mountain to climb before he can get the opportunity to really prove himself. Even though he was a relatively early pick and obviously a lot of potential, he's not ready yet.
Cool.
Jalen Reagor, I don't think he's high on many people's list, but I just don't like last 2019 put a terrible taste in my mouth for Philly wide receivers. Like, I don't like it. And people are going to think that this new guy is going to change the trend, and
he's not.
The bait. Like, maybe if you can get him way at the end and you, like, desperately need someone, but –
Right.
I got him in around 12 of 16. I drafted him around 12 of 16. Alshon Jeffrey, I think he's about falling apart too over there. Deshaun Jackson, he looks good in training camp, but again, old. He could fall apart at any time.
Right.
I just think
What about Nelson Aguilar?
Aguilar's going to drop everything. I give Reagor the benefit of the doubt.
Unlike Aguilar, I didn't drop him.
Yeah. That's a good video. I give Reagor the benefit of the doubt. I mean, another electric player, pretty much up there with speed with like Ruggs, but definitely not a guy I would take before Ruggs. But I just think there's plenty of old guys on that roster with like Ertz and Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey and Nelson Aguilar not being able to catch. There's so much mystery in that pass catch option that I think Reagor's going to get his opportunities before it's too late, you know.
I'm probably staying away from and I don't want to necessarily say this because that's the homer in me, but I'm probably not picking anytime in a draft, even late. I'm probably not picking Donovan Peoples-Jones. I liked the pick for the Browns at the time because I felt like he probably deserved to go higher in the draft, like the NFL draft, but I just don't think I'm just not taking DPJ as a guy that's going to make any kind of impact in this year.
Not this year. Best case, you find him on the waiver wire if he has some success in like week 7 or 8.
Yeah, exactly. Like, okay, if the Browns get injuries, if they get some injuries at wide receiver, then yeah, he might have a chance to step in.
Well, they've got nobody really, to be honest. Especially because Antonio Callaway won for the year. Their third guy is Rashard Higgins, and potentially, obviously, DPJ could be their start out as their number 4 guy.
Yeah.
Now,
but I just don't trust Baker to do anything either. Like, he's not that kind of guy. I mean, he's going to hone in on his 3 or 4 guys, and he's not really going to spread it. He's just not very good, in my opinion. So I wouldn't expect him to do much this year. I know some people are like, oh, he could have like a 7 or 8 touchdown season. And I'm like, no, I just don't see that. I really don't. Not this year. I think it was a good pick by the Browns. I really do, because I think, physical talent-wise, he's up there with anybody. But I just don't think, that just doesn't make sense to take him in your fantasy draft. Like I said, waiver wire maybe week 6, 7, or 8. If he's actually showing that he's playing a lot and getting targets. But other than that, I'm not taking him. And I'm also not taking what's his face from Ohio State either, KJ Hill. I'm not taking him. I'm not taking any of those late round receivers, even though, they talked about how this receiver draft is super deep and like it's really good, and it was, but those late round guys just aren't going to make a big enough impact, at least their first season, in my opinion.
Yeah, same with Quintez Cephas, another guy that maybe could be good for the Lions someday, but
this year, no.
So,
I don't think I'd take Zach Moss really. I don't know what workload he's going to get. If he gets a good workload, it's not going to be to the later half of the season. They need, with every rookie, you need to prove yourself in game first. And he could, I think he will. I think he'll be good by the end of the season. I just don't think they're going to be giving him much attention at the beginning of the season. I don't think those first 5 or 6 weeks they're really going to be looking his way. They will, if they're in a good game where they can take a bad run and give him some chances, they'll give him some shots and then maybe he'll get more carries. But I don't know if I'd waste or put a draft pick on him at this point.
Yep, I agree.
So I say A.J. Dillon is another guy that people are hyping up because they saw his tree trunks for legs. And
he's insane at Boston College too. So
yeah, I mean, but he's still splitting time with Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. There's going to be a shortage of carries this year. He's going to have small opportunities, but unless he like averages 7 yards a carry right out the gate, and he's not really that type of back, then I don't know if we're going to really see a value in him as a fantasy option this year.
The only way I could see him providing value is if they put him in to just truck people at the goal line and he just steals touchdowns.
Touchdowns, yeah.
Yeah, but I just don't see that really happening. So
same with
yeah, go ahead.
I also said Darrington Evans.
Yeah.
Potential backup with David Fluellen for Tennessee behind Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
Could be a great waiver wire pickup late in the season just because of Henry's durability question with the workload. But let's just wait and see on that one for now. And then, again, a guy that maybe you can take in the last round if you feel like it, and I think we did that for you, Ben, when you took the draft off, was Keyshawn Vaughn. Ronald Jones likely is going to get the bulk of the work, but I don't really like Ronald Jones that much. So, Vaughn could be another guy that, again, waiver wire pickup or a really late round pick. Because Brady's going to fling it in an Arians offense. Yep. Arians loves to throw the football. So Vaughn has talent, but if you can get him in a late round or on a waiver in a waiver wire, if you see signs of progress, then I really like that guy. But you have, again, a wait and see type of person.
So I got 3 running backs who changed teams this past year, and I want to know if you guys put trust in any of them or how much trust you put in them. So Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon, and David Johnson. Where do you think they rank? Where are you going to have them? What are you going to do with them? Are you just staying away because you don't know yet, or are you going to give them a chance because they're in a new system?
I'd give Gurley a chance. I wouldn't give any of the other 2 a chance.
I actually I would not give Gurley and Melvin Gordon a chance, but I would give I know who you said. Hang on. David Johnson. Yeah, David Johnson. And especially in a PPR league. I think, again, one of the best pass catch running backs in the NFL pretty much of our time, up there with like Marshall Faulk and Brian Westbrook and stuff. But I like that value there. And, again, the back behind him is Duke Johnson. So not a whole lot of guys sitting behind him ready to go. Ito Smith, I'm pretty high on him. So if Gurley even has a little bit of slowdown, Ito Smith is going to be a good guy to pick up. And then, I don't know, Melvin Gordon, Philip Lindsay's been too successful in a short period of time as a young running back. Just be like, oh, we're going to give Melvin Gordon a shot over you. So I think if Lindsay and Gordon start out splitting carries as a power and speed back sort of deal. And then even Royce Freeman's going to steal some carries yet. So I don't think any of those guys are going to stay healthy for the full season, though. I'm going to be honest. I think the most any one of them play is 12 games.
Yep. I think I'd keep an eye on Gurley. I would really like to know if it was just the system and the mistrust that he had at LA that.
No, it was his knees.
But yeah, I'm sure it had a lot to do with injury. So we'll see if maybe he got a new trainer. Maybe they feel more confident in him than motivated. Who knows? I love David Johnson. So my first fantasy year was
that year he grew up.
16 season, the 1 year he went insane. And I had never looked at fantasy before in my life. I didn't know about it. And he got me I was the 8th seed in our playoffs, and I beat the number 1 seed and got to the semifinal because of David Johnson. So I always have a soft spot for David Johnson. I drafted him the next year when he sucked.
The Lions ended his career.
Yes.
Yep.
But so I would love to see David Johnson again. But yeah, he's going to – Duke Johnson is a pass catcher as well, so he's going to have a lot of competition in that department. He's going to have opportunity. As they're figuring out the receiving aspect of their game and who's getting the ball, he's going to have opportunity in the running side, obviously. Obviously, they value him pretty high if they give up him basically for DeAndre Hopkins. They must think he's a stud. They must think they can really get something out of him. So he's going to have the opportunity. He's going to have trust from Bill O'Brien, as little as that means in these days. But, I think he's going to have opportunity. So if he can do it, if he can, just capture 75% of what he had that 1 year, even 50%, geez. I like him. But, yeah, Melvin Gordon is just I like him too. He's always been one of my guys that I've had in rotation on my team. But he has more competition than he did last year, and he was 50-50 last year. So we'll see if, again, all these guys could just have a solid first couple weeks, and then they get to trust the rest of the year and hopefully stay healthy. So I'd keep
those guys you trust more than Le'Veon Bell, or do you still take Le'Veon Bell before all three of them?
Yes.
Yeah.
I do. I don't think Bell's going to be great, but I still trust him more. If trust is what you're looking for, a guy who can consistently probably give you more points, then I'd probably pick Bell. Yeah, especially if he gets anything else around him, like anything else around him, I think he's going to be better. So
yeah, just an offensive line push would be helpful.
Yeah, just something.
Yeah.
A block.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, Le'Veon Bell's problems aren't Le'Veon Bell's problems. Like, it's his team's problems.
Yes.
Because it is them. It's their injury history. It's their lack of production. It's them or their off-field issues. Like, it's their problem. Like, they need to work on it, and they need to gain trust from a coach. Le'Veon Bell has all the trust he can have in New York. Like, Sam Darnold just gets mono and kisses too many girls and, like, sucks. So
why wouldn't you if you look like Sam Darnold?
But, yeah, like, I would like Le'Veon Bell to be good again. Like, I'd love to see him have some more freedom in that offense to, like, show what – because he's an electric running back to watch. Like, if you just look at his highlights when he does that little stutter step and, like, literally stops me on the line, like, everyone holds their breath. They're just like, ooh. Like, I just saw I'll have to send it to you guys after the show, but there's a mic'd up moment of him juking Calais Campbell at the line. And Campbell literally goes, oh, and, like, falls because he gets juked so bad. Like, in that same cadence, and then he's on the sideline, he's like, he busted my ass. And I'm like, I want to see that Le'Veon Bell again. Like, I want to see that again. To see this 400-pound, 6'9" guy just fall on his butt. Like, yeah, I put more trust on Le'Veon Bell than for sure any of those.
There's no other competition on that backfield, so why not?
All right.
He doesn't.
All right, well, sounds good. We're going to close up this fantasy football show and be back next week. Maybe we'll get to the tight ends next week and debate who are the greatest five.
Oh.
Anyway, people got to eat, so
Jennifer,
good night, people.
Jennifer and
When you're
top
mad,
five.
beat Zach. Hashtag beat Zach.
Yeah, I got to play that tonight too. So try to beat Zach tonight.
All right,
All right.
see you later, guys.
See ya.
Yeah.